Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Shake Sales. I'm your host, Maggie Blume, the sales evangelist at Mailshake. And today we have someone that I love talking about cold email with. We've met a few times before, but today we have Nate, the founder of Humble Code, joining us to talk about cold email. And just recently, Nate was named one of the top LinkedIn sales influencers of 2022 by SendSpark. So thank you so much for being on here, Nate. Do you mind giving a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. I appreciate you having me on here. I started in SaaS in 2007, and before that, I was at the Sundance Film Festival for 4 years, doing corporate relations, but really ultimately looking for sponsors. And that set me on the path to kind of a career in sales. And so for many years, I was in SaaS as an individual contributor, but also a sales leader. And I was a VP of sales over a team of 10 for many, many years, kind of enterprise side. And I took a step back later on to just really kind of focus on building my own agency. And I was consulting, but the number one thing that kept coming up within these businesses was lack of pipeline. It was consistent across every company that I talked with. And so I really just wanted to figure out how I could start solving that for early stage companies. And that set me on a path to really hone and understand how to use email to start conversations. So that's led us to talking today, because that's something that I'm just super passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to have you on here, you always post great content about LinkedIn. And, something that's kind of sparked my interest was you posted about that there's a lot of bad cold emails that you see, or not great, if I could say it a bit kinder, that you get weekly in your own inbox, or let's say the spam folder. But you do say that a small amount of those catch your eye, or you feel like are pretty good. So can you share your process of when you do find those good ones in your inbox? What do you learn from those, and how does that make you better, or, some of the clients better that you work with to write better emails?
Yeah. So number one is, I think we're all aware of this, but when we see emails that talk about, and really they start out the same, hi, my name is, and I'm responsible for this. I just think that we need to stop talking about ourselves in cold email. Just in general, probably when it comes to email, we need to stop talking about ourselves. It's kind of the hero analogy. Who's the hero here? And the hero needs to be the person that we're talking to, like how they can win with us, right? And so if there's opportunities to share relevant examples of similar companies and what the success that they've seen with your company, then I think that's kind of needs to be the framework, right? But I had an old boss at one time that talked about this idea of the NASCAR flag. I don't know if, Maggie, if you've ever seen these decks where like one of the first things you see is all the logos on them.
Yes.
Like, hey, here are all the logos that we work with. And I always think about this, like nobody cares. Nobody cares about the logos that you work with, really, at the end of the day. They maybe do down the road to ensure that, okay, I'm making a decision here that I'm not a first mover. Like I can see that they already work with these other leading companies, so it builds credibility. But in the beginning, if we're focused on ourselves, I just think that's a terrible, terrible way to start the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you just think about it, like if you boil it down to just a conversation or something, when you walk up to someone, of course, you're going to say, hey, I'm Maggie, but I'm not going to go into, hey, I'm Maggie. I worked at Mailshake for 3 years. This is what I did. This is how. It just seems unnatural. And of course, talking in person is different from email, but sometimes I feel like we need to boil it down to something that's simple. It's like, why is someone going to care about these logos that you worked with or something, unless it actually, makes sense? And I think, a lot of I statements are used in email, but I guess what's a better way to structure it, or what's an exercise for someone to, really take themselves out of it?
Well, worse, I think the other side is they start talking about our CEO did this, or we raised this money. I think that's even worse. I just think it's irrelevant and not interesting. No, I think a big piece of this, we also need to recognize that timing is a huge piece of this, right? And so if we can get to what we do and maybe results over a time period, hey, here's what we did for Salesforce. We increased their results by this percentage, and we did it over this time, or we saved them this money over this time. Curious if that would be interesting to you, or would that be something that would help you? Or, just like really relevant content right away. I'm also not a huge believer in like a bunch of niceties up front. For me, I just kind of get right in because I don't want to waste the space. I know there's a lot of conversation out there right now about how long emails should be. And typically the cold emails that I receive, that I see, they're just way too long. Like nobody's going to read 3 or 4 paragraphs. And so being cognizant of really, you probably have 2 paragraphs, and those paragraphs need to be super short. So just being really mindful about what you put in there. And hey, I hope you're having a great Friday and you have some amazing plans for the weekend. Like, that's wasted real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear this argument sometimes too of, isn't it going to sound weird if I don't have those niceties up front, like you said? So how would do you just go right into the relevance, or how does that look like for you when you say that you don't include any of that?
Okay. So there's a lot of debate here, and people, understandably, they argue with me all the time about this. One is, I don't believe, like, if everybody else is doing it, like, hey, hope you're well, Maggie. If everybody else is doing it, then I'm going to do the opposite. Because why? Why would I want to do the same thing that everybody else is doing? That's how 99% of emails are written. So it's not, why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. Like if somebody's zagging, I'm going to zig the other way, right? Or whatever the analogy is there. But the other thing is, I think we forget at the end of the day that kind of a 9 to 5, we're all playing the game, right? Like we're in this, we're all just trying to move our business forward and provide for our families or achieve goals that we have as individuals. We forget this because we're going to get, of course, out of 100 cold emails, we might get one person that's angry or frustrated. But at the end of the day, we're all playing the game. And my job is to partner with relevant businesses that are going to help other businesses. And the majority of those people are never going to know that this solution is out there. And so my job is to go and start conversations around those talking points. And so for me, it's irrelevant if you're having a nice day or not. I know that sounds harsh, but I'm not going to waste that real estate. I'm going to try my best to hit you at the right time with relevant content that's going to get you to say, huh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. That's a problem we have. I want to talk more. They're not going to, if I actually hit that at the right time, they're not going to take a meeting because I wasn't starting with some sort of like, hey, Maggie, hope you're having a great Friday. Like, no one ever like says, hey, I'm not going to take that meeting because you weren't, I don't know, using niceties in the beginning of that, right? Like that email. So anyways, I think for me, I always go back to, hey, we're all playing the game. And at the end of the day, people on the other side of the desk, they're playing the game as well. They're trying to do what's best for their business. And I believe I have a tool that's going to help them do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in turn, it's not like you're saying, even though you might not say happy Friday, it's not like you're saying something rude. So no one's going to think back like, Nate didn't say happy Friday. I'm not going to move this forward. And, I think I always used to tell people like, I feel like being concise can sometimes, I used to think it was rude, but now in my role, when I'm writing cold emails, when I'm on demos, things like that, I mean, being concise is really giving time back to that person too, because even me as the reader, like you said, we're all playing this game. Me as the reader, I'm going to skim that anyways. I'm not going to read that. I don't care. Yeah. And I know that person probably doesn't care.
Exactly. You're going to skim it. And I want you to skim real results that other businesses have had with, our company. That's what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know you went into some of the mistakes that people make with cold email, or why cold email doesn't, hit, like niceties in the beginning, too much talking about themselves, or, their CEO did this and it not really have any relevance with it. What are some other big mistakes that you see people making with cold email?
Well, okay. So I have a few thoughts. So I mentioned, making sure that you're not the hero, that the company that or the person or the prospect you're talking about is the hero. I think the other thing is too, not giving enough relevance to timing. Like saying, hey, maybe there's one side of the argument where it's like, hey, lengthen your sequences out, right? Run your sequences for a longer period of time. So start with a couple up front over the course of a few weeks, but don't stop there, right? Maybe have another email that goes a month and a half later, and then another one that goes 3 months later. Like, don't stop, because timing is a big piece of this. And there's other ways you can manage that, of course. And obviously you're the expert on that piece, like how you could do that. You start another sequence or you start over, but I think there's a piece where it's like not like recognizing that timing is a big piece of this, right? There's a lot of people out there, so you can continue the conversation, move on and try to find other people that maybe the timing is right for them. I think the other piece is they don't spend enough time on their first email. I spend a huge amount of time on my first email because I want that thing to just be awesome. I thread all my emails, and so I always point back to that first email. And I think a lot of times people either they're not thinking strategically through the whole sequence or that cadence, or they're just not putting enough time, effort, and energy into that first email. I think it's the most important thing you can do is really write and craft an incredible first email. I think that's important. I hate Calendly links. Stop using Calendly links. This is like one of my biggest pet peeves. Hate it. Like this will just, and I've posted about this and this drives people crazy, but enough with the cold emails, including Calendly links. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And there's a whole bunch of people. I'm like the 99th percentile. People just do not agree with me on this, but I cannot stand it. I think it adds friction. I think it's tacky. I don't think it's novel. People forever, like 6-7 years ago, it was a novel idea where you could actually schedule a time. Like people would do that in a cold email. They do not do that anymore. And there's people out there that say that they do not agree with me. But the reality is the way that I do this is I use soft CTAs and, the calendar link it's not even part of the equation for the meetings that we book. It's not even part of it because I teach people to propose 3 times and then they offer something at the end, like otherwise, what's best for you? And I'm telling you, 99% of the time, those people choose a time on like based on the time that I offer.
What you sent over.
Now, people are going to say, but that adds more work. That's more friction. Right? Like now I have to go in and I have to schedule it. It's like, yes, of course it's more work for me because I'm trying to book the meeting. Like, why are we trying to push all this work back on the prospect? Yeah, hey, go to my calendar and put a bunch of irrelevant information in there and book a time on my calendar. It's like, why would I do that? That's ridiculous. So these Calendly links, they've got to go. They are the worst.
So you remove them the whole process, not even just cold email, but you don't even use it further down the line.
I don't use it for further down the line. I've dropped it. I use it for stuff like you and I, or friends, or business partners, or of course. But I always propose 3 times and then ask them to choose. Right? It's very rare where somebody will send. The other thing is sometimes people will send me their Calendly. Like, hey, I'd love to meet. Here's my Calendly. Like, sure. Then I'm just going to go on there and book a time because the invitation is there. But no, I found that I don't want to put any more work on the other side. And now again, there's going to be arguments out there because people are really passionate about this. They're going to say, no, I would love to just be able to choose a time. And I think we have to back up and say, is that because it's easy for you as a salesperson or the business owner? Like, we really need to think about this from the standpoint of the person receiving the email. So if they want a calendar link, I will send it to them if it's better for them. But I've just found that I have more success sending times.
Awesome. I like what you said too of think about the reader, think about the person on the other side of this, because I think as sales reps, we all have these tools. We have like Calendly, we have different tools out there, different processes that it makes sense to have those. But I think it does add more work for the buyer on the other side or the lead that you're talking to. Like, for example, the whole argument of, can I get a demo in the first call instead of just a discovery call? And it's like thinking back to, how does the buyer want to go through this process while also, having your own framework to it too. But I think a lot of sales reps forget that, because it's like, yeah, why do we send a Calendly link? Does it make it easier for that lead if you have 15 questions on there trying to qualify them before they get on a qualification call with you? And it's like all these different hoops, like just make it easier. You're going to stand out that way if you're in a pool of, tools that you compete with, or agencies or services, that making it easier for them is going to help that whole process.
I love it. Maggie, you're absolutely right. Because here's the thing. Most people have not looked at their Calendly. They haven't looked at the form. I'm telling you, if I go to a Calendly, this happened to me just the other day. I was like, yeah, I'll take a meeting. So, and it was actually through LinkedIn. Somebody that I actually respect, and I thought, yeah, that's maybe a service that I could use. So I clicked. They're like, hey, grab a time. So I click on it, and it was like 9 questions. And one of it was, hey, could you fill out and let me know what you're hoping to achieve on this call? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. You asked me if I could get on a call to talk about this service. Like, why do I have to fill all this out? And here's the reality. I didn't, it was way too much friction. And so if you're going to do this, if you're going to have a calendar link, you cannot do qualification. This is a whole other podcast, but you can't do qualification through forms. So make it so I can put my email in. That's it.
That's it.
Right? Like, well, I don't need to put my first, last name, email address, and then four other things that are relevant to the conversation. Why would we do that? It's like, I think about this through the whole entire process. I always think about those road spikes that the police put up in these car chases. You hear about these car chases. You ever watch these where they roll those spikes out across the road?
Yeah.
And it tears they run across it, and then the bad guys' tires like all just like shred to pieces, and then they're running on the rims. You know what I'm talking about? We do this all the time as salespeople. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the job is to get a conversation started. Okay, great. We got a conversation. Okay, the next is to get a meeting. Great. Okay, but I just made you do all this stuff. Like, we're starting to throw spikes on the road. It doesn't make any sense. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just comes from like, hey, this worked once or something, or we got information once from this Calendly link. Let's try to implement it for everyone. And it's like, yeah, you're just putting the work back on there. But yeah, you're right. That could be a whole other podcast episode of, making sure that you're thinking about the buyer and the buyer's at the forefront of it. So I do want to go back to that first email that you were talking about. And I always preach this to my clients too, of that first email is your first impression for a couple different reasons. Obviously the messaging that you put in there, but also from a deliverability standpoint too, of getting in the inbox. Because if it's the first time you're emailing someone, it is so important that you have your deliverability on point, like all the things behind the scenes, all the things in the email, and then along with the copy. So can you tell us a couple different things that you think about when you're writing that first cold email to someone?
Great question. So I call it my landing page framework. So I think about writing emails like a great landing page. And if that doesn't make sense to people, like, go and get on YouTube or Google just like great landing pages. And there's so many great examples out there. But the idea of a landing page is to get a human to do one thing. So if you go to a landing page, it's going to have all this great information, but at the end or multiple times throughout that landing page, it's going to have the CTA that designer wants you to embark on, right? So it could be, hey, we want you to get to sign up for our newsletter. That is going to be the CTA in that landing page, right? There's not going to be any links at the top. Like, if I go to the normal website of that company, it's going to have links at the top. It's going to have places I can go. Right? If I go to but not on the landing page. On the landing page, it's not. It's not going to have any links.
Just
if I go
focus.
to the phase, if I go to the footer of that landing page, it's not going to have any links. It's going to have one CTA, and it's going to have something that's intended for me to do on that website, right on that landing page. And so I think about that. I do not want to distract people away from what I want to accomplish with that cold email. So let me give you an example. The other day I got this cold email. Actually, it was a company that I'm advising. I said, hey, I don't know if I can help you, but why don't you send me what your reps are sending, and I'll see if I can help you. The first email that they sent was way too long, of course. That's typical. But this blew my mind because I could not believe that this company was doing this. They were sending it an article about how they were on some list about winning some award, and it was a Forbes article, and it was a link to the Forbes article. And the reality is of course, like if you want people and you're measuring things like clicks, well, it's completely irrelevant because now you sent me to Forbes. So what happens when I get to Forbes? I see an amazing article about this other person and I get distracted and I never come back to your email, right? Another analogy that just drives me absolutely bonkers. I hear it all the time. But like if you're driving in the car and you hear the radio station say something like, hey, follow us on Facebook. What a crazy thing to do. Okay, you have radio station that I'm listening to. You have my attention. You could say, come to our website and sign up to do X, Y, and Z. But instead, you're sending me to the wasteland of all wastelands. You're going to send me to Facebook. I will never find your little radio station because I'm going to watch cat videos or whatever. There's so much distraction out there. And so when I think about an email, I do not have any links, no links, none of this like stuff in my signature that like follow me on LinkedIn, click here to see nothing, not even the unsubscribe. I'm a big believer in sending a text unsubscribe, like, hey, reply if you want to unsubscribe and I'll remove you from the list. No links. The email, the goal is to get them to do what I believe is best for the kind of the process, right? And so for me, it's starting conversations, and I'm going to have ideally one question, and that question is going to be my CTA. And I'm going to go right because I try to write great emails that catch people's attention at the right time, and I'm going to ask for a meeting or at least a quick conversation. So at the end of that, it's going to be soft CTA. Typically, it's going to be a soft CTA that's going to say something like, hey, would it be helpful if I sent over some times to talk more about this? Or, should I is another one that should I send over some times to talk more about this? Like a very soft CTA. And what I find, and I have all the screenshots to kind of prove this methodology, is inevitably people say things like, sure, yes, okay, interesting. That's the response. That's all they say back.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the conversation. Now we've started a conversation, and that's an invitation now for me to send 3 times. So I send, hey, Maggie. And I don't say, hey, great, glad, hey, congratulations, awesome. I don't say any of that. I just say, hey, Maggie, do any of these times work? Then I send 3 times, and I say, otherwise, if not, what's best for you? Send. And 10 minutes later, they say, yeah, Thursday at 3 p.m. works. And then I send the invite and I move on. And that's how it works.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. I wish a lot of people would take that framework, hopefully listening to this and implement it there too, because again, it's going back to if you're putting all these different distractions in your email, exactly like you were talking about the signature, you're also not making this email easy for someone to read and for someone to get back to you on or figure out what they should do. And of course, on one hand, yeah, you want it there as them to take one action, but that's also helping them be really clear of like, if I have too many options in an email, I'm like, should I go to their website? Should I go to their LinkedIn profile? Should I respond to them? And what drives me crazy, this is just a side note, is when people are like, I want to link my company website or company URL in the signature. And I'm like, they're getting an email from your company with your company domain in that they can copy and paste it. If they want to do extra research on you, let them do it. But it's in there, and don't use like an @gmail.com to send the email because that's a red flag to begin with. But you talk about engagement, which I'm really happy that you did. Your goal is just to get a response, and that it should be everyone's goal. And for, again, that reason of it's very easy for someone to reply back, say, yes, interesting, cool, good, let's schedule a time, whatever. That not only is going to help you get people on a clear path into your sales cycle, but that's also helping with deliverability too, because email servers want to see that you're getting engagement. If your CTA is to click on a Calendly link, first, you shouldn't be putting links in your first email because that could get you to a spam folder. But if people are just clicking a link, that means you're getting absolutely no engagement back with you, or not none, but very close to none if that's the goal. And that doesn't make you look good as a sender. Email servers want to see that you're having a back and forth conversation with someone.
Love it. Exactly. And that's why I also don't include a unsubscribe link. Exactly that.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's another way of engagement. And of course, it's still good engagement. It's getting someone off of your pipeline that doesn't want to be there and might not be the right fit. But yeah, like, you want to know that information too. You don't want to just have blindly in there. And I agree. It's no links in there. And I like it when people reply back, unsubscribe or stop instead, and having that verbiage in there. But awesome. Thanks for going through that framework, especially with the landing page. We talked a little bit about deliverability, but what are, some things that you see people missing the mark on when it comes to deliverability?
Well, okay. So I think there's lots of people missing the mark. This is something that we as salespeople, we need to own. So not everybody's a business owner. Not everybody has access to set up the DNS records, but we can all look at our own domain. And so everybody should go to MX Toolbox, put their own the sending domain in and look. And so if you're a SDR, BDR, AE that's using email, you should look. And if there's issues, if there's any red flags, then you should find out within your organization who handles your emails and who has access to the DNS records, and have them fix it, because it's not difficult, but it has a huge impact on deliverability, for sure. Huge impact. That's it's like basic 101 blocking and tackling. People should know how to fix this stuff. And again, if you don't have the keys to that, that's okay, but you should encourage people within your company to fix those things.
Absolutely. And it's just going to make you look better as an SDRA, like you said, because it's something that's not part of your role. Of course, it's not you wake up every day and say, hey, let me check my domain, but check it, send it over to the person in IT that handles the domain, or your manager or whoever. And it's just going to make you look better. You're going out of your way to make your campaigns more successful, make everyone else on your team's campaigns more successful by doing that. So definitely agree with you that it's super important to have in there.
Yeah, sorry. My final thought.
No, you're fine.
Actually, I have two final thoughts on this. One is everybody should have a high value skill. And, for salespeople, I think a lot of people will say, well, my high value skill is the ability to do sales. Well, sales is a very broad swath of knowledge, right? I think we should all have like other areas that we go deep in that really help us throughout our career. And one of the things that I'm constantly blown away by is that email is still relevant. 10 years ago, I would have said, if you would ask me, hey, in 10 years, how are you going to get meetings with people? I would not have said email, because I thought it would be dead by now. But the reality is email is still prevalent. And I think at this point, I don't know how it gets replaced in the next 5 years for sure. But also like in the next 10 years, I don't know, because all these tools have come along and they have not replaced email. So I'm not going to say that's never going to happen. Of course, that's not the reality, but I don't see for the next at least 10 years that that's going to change. And so your high value skill is learn how to do this stuff. Like go to MX Toolbox and understand deliverability. Like what is an SPF record? What's a DMARC? What's a DCAM? Should I care about BME records? Should I care about that? Right? Like if you can figure that out as an SDR or a BDR or a individual contributor, and you have insight into that, you can solve that stuff for other companies. Like that's a huge value that you add when you go to your next company or when you start your own company or whatever it is, like whatever your goals are. But we as individuals need to learn high value skills. I think that's a great skill to focus on. And then the nitty gritty for me, like I've kind of given up on open rates. I just don't track opens anymore. And so for me, I'm all about replies. What are my reply rates across campaigns? And so some people will say, hey, you're flying blind. You don't know. Well, the reality is I'm doing everything I can in the beginning to ensure that I hit the inbox, right? Mm-hmm. So these open rates are irrelevant really at the end of the day because it's not that helpful. I have some campaigns that are telling me that I'm getting 85% open rates. Well, that's not helpful. What am I going to do with that information, right? Mm-hmm. If my reply rates are still around that 1.5% to 4%, like that's what's helpful for me. Are people finding what I'm sending interesting and are they replying back? That's what I want to know. So I encourage people like, hey, experiment, test, just turn off the open tracking.
I love it because at the end of the day, your goal in this part of the sales process is to get a reply. So that should be the most important number that you're looking at there too.
Yeah. One other piece that comes out of that, because I mentioned making sure you're getting the inbox. So the other piece, people always ask, like, what should I use for a subject line? Or what should my body of my email be? Or what should the CTA be? And the reality is if you do not have the proper foundation set up, like, don't even waste testing that stuff. Why? Why waste? Because it has to go like this. The order is real simple. Do I have the foundation set? Is everything set? Like, I'm not on any blacklists. Okay, great. My DMARC, my DKIM, my SPF, my MX records are all aligned. Everything looks good. Okay, great. Now you can start doing the other testing. But it doesn't make sense to A/B test your subject line or your body of your email if you know you're not going to the inbox. It is the craziest thing. This happens all the time. People will say, hey, will you look at my emails? And before I do that, I'm like, well, let me look at your domain. Well, geez, you're on 3 blacklists, right? Like, I mean, I could write the greatest email in the history of, but literally no one will see it. No one will see that. So why would I waste my time writing an email for you? So I think people need to also like be cognizant of that. Like what's the foundation look like? And making sure that I actually have that foundation in place before I worry about this lift stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's why should we care about deliverability? It's really simple. If you don't have good deliverability from the beginning, you're not going to get any results because bad deliverability equals you're most likely getting in spam. If you're going in spam, no one's reading your emails. No one's responding to your emails and you're not getting any leads from anything that you've just done. Yeah. Awesome. We could talk about deliverability and cold email, I'm sure, Nate, all day, all week, but I think we could wrap it up there. We have some great information that we got from you in your process. Thank you so much for joining us. Last thing is, where can people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. You can find me, Nate Stoltenow, on LinkedIn, and shoot me a message. Great to
Yep. Don't send him a Calendly link though. But yeah, thank you again, Nate. And we'll catch everyone next time on Shake Sales. Thanks so much for listening.